This is
the local music revolution. The local music revolution. The local music revolution. The local music revolution. The local music revolution.
Hello and welcome to the Local Music Revolution. I am your host, Ogre. Today I have a special guest, technically not currently a musician as he is not playing in a band, but he is connected to music in very, very different ways. And he is also a friend of mine going on 3.5 years now. His name is Jerry Smith. Some of you may have heard of him. He is a film critic that works with Icons of Fright, Delirium, and Fangoria magazine. I've known Jerry since 2012. I was working in a band called Nordstorm, and they were out of Visalia, California. We needed pictures. My guitarist at the time, James, you may have heard me talk about him. He decided to call Jerry as he knew Jerry from his previous band, and we took pictures with Jerry, which was one of the most fun experiences dealing with music I had ever had. So it was amazing. Jerry did some great photos. I still have them somewhere on my social media. I think I bring my personal one out every once in a while as a profile picture because I just think it looks so damn cool. After the pictures, I stayed in contact with Jerry. Every once in a while, I would talk to him and see how he's doing and talk to him about his work and what he's doing at the time. But when I made this podcast, he was one of the first people I put on the list of people I wanted to have on this podcast because he is connected to music. He was a musician at one point, but he's also into filmmaking and photography, as I mentioned. So it's great to have that kind of element, that different view for this kind of podcast. That being said, we get into talking about horror movies. We talk about his love for music, how he saw Pantera and White Zombie together in the early 90s. That's a lucky strike, man. I really wish I would have been able to see it. But we talk about that. We talk about him doing a video for a local band out of Visalia, California, and the process that took. And we also get into how he got his job at Icons of Fright as editor-in-chief and how amazing everything has been to him since then. Before I get into the interview with Jerry, I want to take this time to say thank you to all of the bands that have been and are on this podcast. I also want to thank all of the fans that are listening. It's truly amazing how much steam this has picked up in a short time, and I really, really appreciate everybody listening and being involved. You guys are amazing. I also want to thank my sponsor, Stringjoy, Scott, everybody there. Thank you guys so much for letting me be a part of your roster and being so great to me. If you guys are interested in going and getting custom strings, custom gauges, what you need to do is you need to go to stringjoy.com, go there, fill out the information that Scott and his staff need to know. They will talk you through it. They will let you know what you need, what their advice is. If it doesn't work, hey, contact them again. They are diligent in their pursuit of getting you the strings you need. When you're done and when you're at checkout, please use the promo code LOCAL, that's LOCAL, for a discount because you are wonderful listeners of this podcast. You can get a hold of Stringjoy on Twitter and Instagram at StringJoyStaff. You can also go to Facebook.com/Stringjoy to get them on Facebook. And please tell them you heard about them here at the Local Music Revolution. You can contact me and keep up with the podcast on Twitter at TLMR Podcast, on Instagram at The Local Music Revolution, and on Facebook, facebook.com/The Local Music Revolution. You can also keep up with everything coming out on the podcast by going to thelocalmusicrevolution.wordpress.com. If you are a user of WordPress, you can subscribe and keep updates. If you're not, hey, sign up and keep up to date with all of the things that are coming out with this podcast. Now, this is Jerry Smith. All right, we're here with Jerry Smith. How you doing, brother?
Not too bad, man. How about you?
I'm doing all right, man. I'm doing very good today. Today's been a great day.
Awesome.
So to get into this real fast, you are a film
Critic.
There you go. A critic, director, photographer, musician. So let's start at the beginning. What'd you get into first? Was it film or was it music?
It was film. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I got into music very early too, as far as like appreciating it. But as far as like biggest passion, yeah, film easily.
And what was the thing that got you into film?
Well, it's kind of like a hardcore story, actually. My mom, this is gonna be crazy, and like your listeners are gonna be like, "God, this got dramatic." But my mom, like, was having like a rough life because she had me when she was like, I think 17 or 18, and so she married my dad that was like, I don't know, like 17 years older than her when she was like 16.
Wow.
So yeah, she kind of like just married him just to get out of the house basically because she was like a preacher's kid, and so she had me very early, and she kind of left my dad when I was like 5 to run off and eventually remarry this guy from Bombay, India, and
oh, wow.
This guy that was like obsessed with like American culture and stuff. So yeah. So anyways, during the summers, like my brother, who's like 2 years older than than myself, he and I would go stay the summer with my mom wherever she would live. She would like move from state to state. But when I was about 6, I think, and I wrote like a pretty lengthy article about it on Icons of Fright about 2 years ago, I think. But when I was about 6, I went to go stay with my mom and her new husband in Arizona. I think it was Phoenix. And he was like a super nice guy when he was sober, but when he was like drunk, he was really just like abusive.
Oh, okay.
Like just, I mean, putting out cigars on me and just like crazy stuff.
Oh, shit.
So I mean, I was like an abused kid really early on, you know, like physically, mentally, you know, molested, that kind of stuff, which I mean, it's not an issue to me now. Like I'm 34 and I have kids, you know, so like stuff that happened to me when I was a kid isn't like a crutch. Like I'm not gonna write like a whole like Korn album about it, but but yeah. And so he also broke my mom's back.
Oh, shit.
And yeah, so she was in the hospital on and off, and when she got better, she worked at a hospital. She wasn't a nurse, but she's just under that. And to kind of keep me kind of away from that whole environment, she used to give me enough money as a kid to pretty much stay in the theater, which was kind of like very close, like I think maybe like a building or two from where we lived. Wow. In Arizona, like keep me in the theater from pretty much when she went to work in the morning until she got home, like that night. So as a kid, I just, you know, like, and this was before like Columbine in '99, you know, and that's when like everything shifted and people started carding kids to get into rated R movies and stuff. But in the early '80s and stuff, no one really like cared about, you know, who was watching what, and if they did, you could just forge you know, a little note from your parents saying that it's okay for you to watch whatever movie, even if it's hardcore, you know, and and they would let you in. So I was like 6 or 7 spending like, I don't know, like 8 or 9, 10 hours a day sometimes, like in the theater. And what's awesome is the first films that I watched were horror films. And
wow, really?
Yeah, they didn't scare me at all. In fact, like it was like, you know, I was like a really rambunctious kid before the whole abuse started, and after that happened, I was very, quiet and shy and kind of reserved. I didn't like talking to anybody, because anyone that's ever dealt with that as a kid, they know you kind of like bottle it up and kind of like, shy away from everything.
Yeah, you do.
But the horror films, what they did for me was they kind of allowed me to go on, like that kind of journey with, the characters, whether it's like the final girls or like, the male survivors and stuff. Basically, I was able to like live vicariously through these characters, and they overcome all these different horrible situations, and it almost like gave me a sense of hope. And that's why to this day, I mean, people think I'm weird when I say that, but I hold the horror genre as high as I hold my children, and even like my kids know that, that's my thing. So
Yeah.
I'm very into that. It's a huge part of my life, and since that moment, that's pretty much, my favorite thing in the world. And I've always been just completely enthralled and interested in the horror genre. Love the movies. But when I was 9, I discovered Fangoria magazine, and from that moment, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to write for Fangoria. That was my lifelong dream. And so my passion for films and filmmaking and since I was 9, wanting to be a writer, and write stories or write anything having to do with the horror genre, and specifically, like I said, Fangoria was like such a huge deal to me as a kid, and it still is. It gave me appreciation of not only film but writing and that kind of stuff. And I'm a huge fan. I worship the genre and just films in general. I mean, I don't only watch horror films, obviously. Some of my favorite films are non-horror films.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's kind of like my thing,
All right, so you said that you found the Fangoria magazine, and it says in my research that you are now a freelance writer for Fangoria and for Delirium magazine. How did those two things come about?
Well, let me think. I think it might have been 4 years ago, maybe 3. A lot of my friends, they were going to LA because I live in the Central Valley currently. Yeah. But a lot of my friends were going to LA for some movie that they wanted to watch, and I couldn't make it for some reason or another, so I stayed home. And I'd always been a huge fan of the horror journalism kind of sites. Fangoria has their own site, shocktillyoudrop.com, bloodydisgusting.com, or Dread Central. And one of my favorites since, 2005, I think, 2006, I started reading it, was Icons of Fright. And Icons of Fright started in 2004 by Rob Galuzzo and Mike C. And Rob Galuzzo, I read his stuff for, it's like 6 or 7 years. And he also directed a documentary that I was a huge fan of called The Psycho Legacy. It's this great documentary all about the Psycho franchise.
Wow.
And every time I would go to LA, I'd run into Rob Galuzzo because he also worked when he wasn't doing film stuff or whatever, he worked at Amoeba Records in Los Angeles.
Oh, nice.
And so I'd run in there, and we kind of became acquaintances at that point. And when my friends went to LA to go see this, whatever movie it was, I can't remember what it was, but I stayed home, and I was just like, man, I got to just do something with this, writing thing. I've written my whole life. I want to actually pursue this and, make a go for it. So I messaged, I think I emailed or, I don't know, Facebook or something, Rob Galuzzo, and I was just like, you know what, we're acquaintances. I'm obviously a huge fan of Icons of Fright. Can you give me any advice on starting my own site? Because, as you know from our conversations, I'm a huge horror fan. I'm a writer, I'm really passionate about films and stuff. Do you have any advice? And he's like, yeah, I could tell you, what you should do. Or you could just kind of if you want, you could kind of just contribute to Icons of Fright if you want. And I mean, that was like a huge deal to me. I mean, how often do you get to write for pretty much one of your favorite sites? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I would think the equivalent to, you know, a metal fan writing for, like, I don't know, Metal Hammer site, or, I mean, Blabbermouth or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Or Decibel or something. But, yeah, I was stoked, and I was just a contributor, you know, like whatever I wanted to write about, blah, blah, blah. You know, and then I was so passionate about it. Like, it was the only thing I kind of, when I wasn't working, you know, day job kind of stuff, it was the only thing that, you know, I focused on. And so, you know, Rob Galuzzo kind of saw that passion, and he was kind of like, he got a nice job at FearNet when FearNet was still around, and he was doing film stuff. So he didn't have a lot of time to kind of focus on Icons of Fright that much. I mean, he was still kind of in control of it and still kind of overseeing it, but there really wasn't someone kind of like steering the ship, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, a while after writing for Icons of Fright, Rob kind of handed the keys over to me and said, you know what, go for it. You know, like, run it, call the shots, you know, like, the vision is yours. I see it in you, you know, there's a passion, go for it. And I've written for Icons of Fright since then, and I'm the editor-in-chief now. But Rob also is one of the three hosts of my favorite horror podcast, Killer POV. And if your listeners haven't listened to that, it's just fucking amazing. And the other two hosts are Elric Kane, who's one of the nicest guys, a really good guy, filmmaker, you know, producer, and he also owns this really awesome cafe in Los Angeles called Jump Cut Cafe.
Oh, nice.
And basically the whole thing's film, you know, related, and it's great. And the other host, the third host, is Rebecca McKendry, who filmmaker, and she's one of, you know, a huge part of Fangoria. She's been a huge part of Fangoria for a long time. So because Rob Galuzzo took a chance on me, eventually, you know, he knew that I had always wanted to write for Fangoria. And when the time came, he kind of vouched for me to Rebecca McKendry, you know, and then she gave me the opportunity to kind of like freelance write for Fangoria. You know, anytime I had like a really cool idea to pitch to them, or they needed someone to cover like a premiere for Fangoria, or
nice.
You know, an event or something, or, you know, that kind of stuff. You know, I've been able to do it. You know, my first issue of Fangoria that I was in was the Scream Factory issue, which is like my favorite company putting out like retro and new horror films today. And you know, I wrote about like, I think like 5 or 6 different Scream Factory films that like I really liked, like Witchboard, Phantasm 2, like some really cool movies. And because of that, when the time came, Rebecca McKendry vouched to me to Chris Alexander, who is the editor-in-chief of Fangoria magazine, who also at the time just started Delirium magazine, which is kind of more like cult film kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Full Moon movies, you know, like the Puppet Master movies and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that kind of, you know, subgenre of horror. So she vouched for me to Chris, you know, who started that magazine. And, you know, Chris, like Rob and like Rebecca, took a chance on me. And, you know, I've been writing freelance for Delirium ever since. You know, the first issue I was in of that was, I think, Delirium number 4, which is like this really great interview, this long interview I did with Tim Thomerson, who has been like a character actor for like decades. And he starred in one of my favorite movies of all time, Trancers. And so I did a pretty lengthy interview with him, and then Delirium number 7, which is going to come out this month. I have a really great, extensive interview with William Butler, who was in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3,
Wow. Nice.
the Night of the Living Dead remake, and now he's a filmmaker and a producer himself, and really great guy. And on the 23rd of June, I'm going to be at Dark Delicacies in Burbank, which is like my favorite horror store around, doing a signing for Delirium Number 7, along with William Butler and Joe Dante, who directed Gremlins, which is like a huge deal to me, and a bunch of other great people. So basically, for Fangoria and for Delirium, I mean, like I said, it was all like, this person, taking a chance on me, showing them that, I had a passion for that, and it's kind of like, it goes with like music too, like you got to pay your dues in whatever you're passionate about.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they start bands or they, like when Icons of Fright started in 2004, like there weren't a lot of sites devoted to like horror films, and nowadays like there's like a million of them. So, and like a lot of people feel like, it's like bands. A lot of people, they start a band 1 second and they're trying to get signed like the week later,
Yeah.
You kind of have to pay your dues in whatever you're very passionate about. So because Rob took a chance on me and I really had that passion for that, Becca noticed that. And after Rebecca noticed that, then Chris Alexander noticed that. So, I mean, it's kind of like a process of kind of like working your ass off and showing people that you genuinely care about, your art and what you're passionate about.
All right, so you're speaking about that, but I kind of want to go back for a second. You mentioned Witchboard. Are you talking about the one from the 80s? That really cheesy Ouija board kind of movie?
Yes, definitely.
Oh my gosh, man. I haven't seen that in years. It's one of my favorite horror movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, definitely. I love that one. And Kevin Tinney, the director, also, like, he followed that up with Night of the Demons, the original, which is one of my favorite movies.
Oh, really? I didn't know that, man. My mother... I'm sorry. My mother, she left it out one day, and I thought it was something else. I thought it said Witchblade at first. So I was like, oh, this might be fun. So I pop it in, and I was scared shitless. I was like, this is crazy. So I watched it more and more, and that's actually one of my favorite horror films I've ever seen.
Oh, I love it. And
it's amazing. It's cheesy in such a good way, though.
Well, it is kind of cheesy, but at the same time, what makes Witchboard so great is that it doesn't rely on a lot of like gore and that kind of stuff. And I love gory movies and that kind of stuff. But Witchboard is like an old school kind of horror movie. It's about the characters and just like fun situations. I absolutely love that movie.
Well, I like the fact that it was so suspenseful at times. There was, like you said, there was no gore. It was just so suspenseful. You're sitting there like trying to figure out when the second is going to happen.
Oh yeah, and like the end when one of the main two guys, like one of the main characters, like and like an axe flies through the air and gets him in the head, and you're just like, what the hell?
Yeah, I know.
It's nuts. But what I was saying earlier about Scream Factory, that company, they're awesome. They take movies that have been out of print or like fan favorite horror films, and they put out these special edition collector Blu-rays of them. And they put out Witchboard, and they put out Night of the Demons, and they all these brand new interviews with all the stars, commentaries and stuff. And their Witchboard release is just amazing, dude. It's so good.
I haven't seen that since my mother had it on VHS.
Yeah.
And
I still remember
I think
that original cover of that.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. All right, so going back to all of the things you've done with Icons of Fright. Now, I don't know the time frame on this, but I do know the fact that you were featured on Rob Zombie's website. Can you go into how that happened? Because that is huge for anybody.
Oh, yeah. Well, basically, when kind of after you kind of pay your dues in the writing thing, a lot of people, not connections, because I hate that word. It kind of sounds kind of silly and pretentious, but,
yeah.
I deal with a lot of like PR people, from studios. They'll send me, like Blu-rays and DVDs, to review and stuff, before they're out, or I'll go to premieres, and, so on. And I think that came about, someone from the label that Rob Zombie's on, emailed me and asked if I would be interested in hearing his new album before it was out. and reviewing it.
Is that the
And I was
Rat
just
Vendor Regeneration one?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And obviously, you know, I was just like, hell yeah. I mean, I've loved zombies since the White Zombie days, you know, and as far as films, I mean, I love a good amount of his movies. I mean, I have like a Devil's Rejects chess piece. You know, I'm a huge fan.
Oh,
But
nice.
that album, I mean, it just like kicked my ass because I love his stuff, but at the same time, like nothing's quite hit me as much as like the White Zombie stuff did.
Are you talking Astro Creep, or are you talking about further back?
Well, Astro Creep is one of my favorite albums of all time, but like with Exorcisto and even the artsy stuff at the beginning, I just loved that band because they had more of that. They had that kind of industrial thing here and there, the sound clips, but for the most part, it was just like a fucking metal band that sounded like no other band, you know?
Yes.
And
yes.
I appreciate his solo stuff, and it's cool, but what the newest album did, that was the first time that Rob Zombie actually fully embraced the whole band thing again. And now he has pretty much, at this point in his career, I think he has the most solid fucking band he's ever had. Even more than the White Zombie era. I mean, I'm not saying the music's better than the White Zombie era, but just, I mean, dude, you got like Ginger Fish, that, you know, from Marilyn Manson playing drums. I mean,
you have John Five, you know, playing the guitar.
John Five.
And what's his name?
Was in Marilyn Manson, but I mean, that guy has been a session player for decades. David Lee Roth.
Oh yes.
He played. I mean,
John
Five played with everyone, and his solo albums are just fucking insane.
I know, man. He's a great guitarist.
He's great, and he's a very nice guy. I mean, a couple times I've had, you know, the privilege to meet him at like conventions or something. John's always been like the fucking coolest guy. And Matt Montgomery, or like Piggy, you know, as he's called, like the bass player, like the whole band is so fucking tight and solid.
Yeah.
And that newest album, I was just like, shit. There was literally only one song on that entire album that I wasn't like super crazy about. Like I liked it, but you know, it's like eh. And so I wrote my review, sent it into the publicist or whatever, and then I think someone texted me or something like that, and you know, they're like, dude, have you checked Rob Zombie's website? And I was just like, no, I don't think I go on his website very often. I mean, I love the guy, but I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I went on there, and you know, they posted a review and stuff. And what's funny is, if I remember correctly, Zombie was just like, man, the one song this guy didn't like is my favorite song on the record. I just got a kick out of that. But there's little things like that. I mean, I never write for that kind of recognition, you know, because when you're a writer, it should always be about the writing itself. It should always be about the work. And that's something that Rob DeLuzzo really kind of instilled on me very early on. You know, don't let what anyone thinks, you know, kind of sway how you write, your style. You know, if you get recognition, don't let that, you know, make you think that you're hot shit or you're better than anyone. Because unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there that kind of do that, and it sucks. But I mean, there's been quite a few times where, you know, you're kind of taken back with that kind of stuff. You know, like, wow, like not cocky, but really appreciative of people really taking the time out of their day to kind of read your stuff. You know, and like that kind of translated in the horror stuff. I mean, at this point, like, you know, like I've quotes and stuff, you know, I've been on like posters and DVDs and Blu-rays and that kind of stuff. So I mean, it's crazy, you know, and I'm always appreciative of it. Like I said, I never write for that kind of recognition, but it always makes anyone in any particular kind of like field, whether it's music, you know, writing, filmmaking, photography, anything, it always kind of not makes your stuff valid, because I think as an artist, everything you should do should be valid to yourself, but it makes you kind of feel kind of appreciated, you know?
Yeah.
But the good thing is, like, the trick is not to let that make you feel appreciated for too long, because, you know, you should be really stoked on that, but then you should move on and really work your ass off on the next thing, you know? But yeah, that zombie thing was really great.
All right, so we've talked about your film and everything like that, and we just talked about the Rob Zombie thing, so let's move to the music. What
Mhm.
got you into music? What made that as big of as something as the horror in your childhood? Was there a
Uh,
specific band or album or song that just was like, this is what I want to do?
well, I mean, like I said, my mom was really young when she had me, so one of the good things about that was she was still listening to kind of current music, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, my mom would have like the Joshua Tree by U2 when it came out, or
Oh, nice.
I think I think the two most influential records as far as me being a kid and listening to them when they first came out was Disintegration by The Cure and Pretty Hate Machine by Nine Inch Nails. And
Wow.
because I was into horror very early, like I said, but I was also into like, I mean, legitimately good music very young. I mean, I don't know many other 8-year-olds whose parents like took them to the music store to get like the cassette of Pretty Hate Machine when it came out, you know?
Yeah.
Like, that's just weird to me. Like, I wouldn't take my kids to go buy that shit, but, you know, so I had appreciation for that stuff as long as, you know, I can remember. But, and I still listen to music religiously, and I love it, and my tastes are all across the board. You know, my favorite bands of all time, stuff like Elliott Smith, who's a singer-songwriter that unfortunately killed himself about a decade ago. You know, I grew up, you know, in the punk rock kind of stuff. So, like, you know, those old school punk bands, you know, Black Flag, that kind of stuff. But, you know, like Alkaline Trio, the newer kind of stuff. But as far as wanting to play music and, like, that kind of passion, that I could pinpoint that to an exact day. And
Wow.
that's actually March 27th of 1995, when this girlfriend of mine, and I was only like 14 or 15 at the time, she was just like, hey, I got tickets to go see a show in Salem, and this is Salem, Oregon. If I get you a ticket, if my mom buys you a ticket, will you go with me? And I was expecting some like really awful stuff, you know? Like, I don't know, some bad boy band kind of crap at the time. But I was just like, yeah, sure, let's go. What is it? And she was like, I don't know if you're into these bands, but these two bands called, the opening band's called Typo Negative, and the headlining band's called Pantera.
Oh.
And I was just like, wait, what? Are you serious? But anyways, so I went with her to the show, and it was just one of the most profound experiences of my life. And, you know, and Pantera obviously was just out of this world. I mean, everything from like the laser pot leaves on the walls to like people throwing like drugs on the stage, and Phil would just be like, going nuts. And Dimebag obviously is one of the best guitarists of all time.
Yeah.
And pretty much that whole band. But it was just such a great show, and I've always been a massive Pantera fan. So, I mean, that was great. But the moment that fucking just resonated with me was the opening band, Typo Negative. And I hadn't heard of them at the time, so I was just like, oh, this should be cool. And, they came out, and this is during, like, the Bloody Kisses album.
Oh,
and,
nice.
And they played, and I was just like, what the hell is this? This is insane. And I remember Peter Steele just being, like, one of the fucking just a figure that you had to fucking watch. And his bass playing was just so thick, and in your face. And all of their guitars having that, like, glow-in-the-dark green neon on them,
Yeah.
It was just the craziest fucking show I've ever been to. So I was just like, you know what? I want to play bass. This guy's fucking rad. And a couple months later, I was just like, man, I need to go to shows here more often. And a couple months later, there's a record store, I forgot the name of it, but they had, like, coming up on this date, you could buy tickets to this place. And there was another show that I watched not too long after that, and it was Babes in Toyland opened up, and then the Melvins, and then White Zombie.
Oh, nice.
And I was just stoked as fuck because, White Zombie and the other two bands I'm still huge fans of. But it was right around the Astro Creep time. And I remember being just so stoked, and I was so just into music and wanting to play so much, you know. And then the first two bands were great. I was stoked. I was up front, and then the lights went out, and everything was silent. And the opening, the part from the Astro Creep album, like, played over the speakers, you know, perhaps you better start this from the beginning, you know?
Nice.
And then Sean Yseult was like, boom, boom, you know? And I was just like, oh my God, what am I in store for? And then when that song, they opened up with that song, and when it fucking picked up, explosions, all of them ran on stage. Rob Zombie ran on stage with a fucking fire hydrant hose for some weird reason, drenched everyone, fucking fire, and it was just the most gnarly thing ever. So, like, going to all those shows growing up, and then, you know, I got into, like, punk rock music when I was, like, in my teens, too. You know, like, music's always been really important. And, like I said, my tastes are just everywhere. And I played bass first. I started playing piano after that just to learn something. And then in 1996, you know, I discovered Elliott Smith, like I said, and it was just, his music just blew me away. And he had just, like, the best voice to this day of all time, in my opinion. And so I wanted to play guitar. And so I learned guitar. You know, and I just had, like, a huge passion. So when I was like, about 15 or 16 on, you know, I was just in bands nonstop. And, you know, any person that plays and has even an ounce of humility, they can say that, you know, most of those bands probably weren't that great, you know? So,
yeah.
you know, a lot of, like, awful pop punk bands and shit like that. And then, you know, got into some harder bands. You know, like, one of the bands I was into that really wasn't that great, like, we opened up for, I was like, Bayside and Fall Out Boy in 2004, which, I mean, that's really nothing to brag about, because the Bayside's good, but, I mean, fucking Fall Out Boy. But, you know, it was before those dudes blew up, and, God, like, some of those guys are, like, the biggest pricks I've ever met in my life. But,
wow.
You know, it's just, you know, just playing in different bands. You know, I was in a band called Waiting Fangs, so it was a lot of fun. And I think that's kind of the band that kind of did the most as far as, like, really trying to go for it, you know?
Yeah.
But by that time, by the Waiting Fangs time, like, you know, I already had, you know, I was already married for the second time. You know, I had, like, 2 kids. So eventually, you know, I kind of put that aside. But, I mean, I still play. And I haven't played in the band in quite some time, but I still listen to music religiously.
Yeah, there's a part of you that's always gonna have that, though. Once you've performed and done anything in music, it kind of sticks with you, and that's one of the best parts about it. All right, so moving on from playing in bands, one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to interview you and talk to you is because my last legitimate band that I was in, called Nordstorm, you did pictures, and we were in talks for a while to do a video or something like that.
Yeah.
How did you get into doing that stuff? Those pictures were great, by the way.
Yeah, they're good.
But how'd you get into doing the stuff for the bands as opposed to being in the band? Was it a natural change, or was it kind of a necessity or something that you've been thinking about for a while?
Well, you know, I've always been passionate about, like, filmmaking and stuff. And so, you know, I had made, like, a couple, like, short films at that point. None of them were that great. I was kind of, like, finding my kind of footing as far as that kind of stuff. And I knew all the guys in the band Catharsis.
Yeah.
You know, just from different things. John Young, the vocalist, you know, I played in bands that would play shows with his brother, Jason Young. And so, like, you know, I was pretty familiar with that family, you know, and then when Catharsis started, you know, like, I was friends with them, and they needed a music video, so we made, like, a music video for one of their songs, and it was a pretty cool experience. You know, I had fun with that, and, man, I'm sweating here. And James Kaufman was in Catharsis at one point and had seen that video, and I was working at I was working at some warehouse. I forgot, I think BF or something like that. And he was too at the time. And yeah, they're telling me about, you know, that band that you talked about, your band, and like how you guys were going to record and stuff and wanted to do a music video and that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of how that came about. But as far as like the photography and stuff, that's always been like a huge thing to me too. I don't like a lot of the stuff that bands do as far as photography because it tends to be the same kind of look, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, there's some really good photographies out there, like, you know, Jeremy Saffer and stuff like that. But as far as photography, I've always been into like the kind of weird stuff as far as like black and white stuff or just like, you know, more like darker kind of feeling stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, to this day, I still take photos religiously. It's very, very huge to me. And I'm really stoked that, like, our phones have come that long, or that far, you know, to where, like, you could, you know, if you can't afford a good camera, you know, if you have, like, a new iPhone, you could still, you know, like, take some really neat photos.
Yeah, there's
But,
some
I mean,
really
you
good
know,
shit.
at some point, if you're really passionate about that, you know, like writing, like filmmaking, like music, you know, you got to invest in your art, you know. So
Yeah.
at some point, you know, I kind of took that to heart and, you know, bought a decent camera, bought some lights, you know, bought a whole setup and, you know, kind of went for that for a while. And, you know, I think I made some like decent money for that, and I still do it. Not so much for the money anymore because I'm, you know, I write. That's kind of my thing, you know.
Yeah.
But as, you know, everything that I've always been passionate about, I'm still equally passionate about today.
Well, the pictures that you took of Nordstorm, those were some of the craziest pictures I've ever seen a band take.
There's one photo in particular, and to this day, it was just like the biggest happy accident of like photography, and I forget the guy's name. The guy with the long hair.
Chewy.
Man, yeah. There's the photo, and he has the face paint on, and it's kind of like a reddish background, and it's such a it looks, I don't know, it looks very kind of like tribal Indian looking kind of,
Yeah.
you know. But that photo was just so nuts, and I think that whole like photo kind of session thing was a lot of fun. I remember all of us, you know, being up on Rocky Hill or wherever it was around that time, and it must have been a pain in the ass for you guys because you guys had like your like, you know, war paint on or what, you know, what it was. And I remember like all I had was like a camera and stuff, but you guys were just like loaded with like paint and everything else. It must have been hell for you guys.
I remember that specifically because they put the paint on me and I had red paint somewhere. And somebody made the joke, it's like, it's hot out here, you're sweating, and it looks like there's blood running down your face. It's perfect for those pictures. I was like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
you know, it's hotter than shit out here.
Yeah, totally. Like, because there was, like, no shade whatsoever. We were just in the middle of, like, the hills.
It was brutal, but those pictures, man, I to this day, that's one of my favorite things I've done with the music was being able to have that photo shoot because it was so what's the word? Just interesting. Like the way everything turned out was just it was incredible, man.
Oh
awesome
yeah,
experience.
It was a lot of fun. I had a really fun time doing it. But I mean, yeah, as far as like band photography and stuff, after that I did more stuff for like catharsis and stuff for a while. But aside from that, I mean, I think the point where I stopped wanting to do it for money and just do it just for like passion was when I got hired to photograph and film a wedding. And I was just like, yeah, sure, you know, and they paid me like $400, $500 or something. And I was just like, yeah, why not? And it was like one of the worst experiences of my life.
Oh.
Because, you know, as far as filming, you know, they wanted like a little kind of short kind of, you know, they were getting married. They wanted kind of memories.
Yeah.
They wanted everyone to talk. So, you know, I'd go up to everyone and take photos. And I'd go up to, like, all the friends and ask them to say something. They'd be like, no, it's okay. You know, these, like, big, like, bro tough guys. It's like, you know, cauliflower ears and huge necks. and it was such a bad experience. And I remember going to the bride and the groom and asking them to say something, you know, on camera and take a photo, and they were like, well, I don't know what to say. And I was just like thinking, like, dude, you're getting fucking married. You have nothing to say. And I remember it was such a bad experience that I told my friend that was like doing the second camera for me, I was just like, dude, I'm getting the hell out of here. And he's like, they haven't even cut the cake or danced yet. Won't they be pissed? And I was just like, I don't give a shit. I will give them $500. And we just took off. And on the way home, I was just like, I don't care. I will never do something that I don't want to do again, as far as like photography and stuff. And luckily, I was able to make like a decent thing for them, and they never questioned me being there. And I just pulled like photos off of their Facebook or something of them dancing and put it into the video, and they never noticed. But yeah, you know, you just do like a really like After Effects or like, you know, Final Cut something of like putting like a still image and kind of like zooming in, you know.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. That's really awesome. All right, so back to the music videos. Did you just do that one for the Catharsis, or have you done more music videos?
I've done a couple, but I mean, the problem is this. A lot of bands, and I'm not talking about Catharsis because those guys are cool, but a lot of bands, when they want music videos, in their heads, they have these mega ambitious things, you know?
Yeah.
But when it comes time to pay for those things that they want, they're just like, oh, no, well, we don't have any money. It's like, well, why do you, what the hell are you expecting? Like, you know, you can't have, like, barrels on fire and all these, like, shitty things that you see in bad music videos unless you want to pay for stuff. So, you know, there's a couple videos that I did that I just kind of did just to do them or for money, you know, that stuff I'm not proud of. But the Catharsis video, it was just for fun, you know. They wanted a music video. We wanted to, you know, they were like, okay, do you have any ideas? I was just like, well, obviously, you know, someone with a bag over their head comes into the house and kills all you guys. And they're like, okay. And so, you know, we shot this little story thing with their bass player at the time. Because those guys changed bass players and drummers like I changed my fucking shirt. As much as I love those guys. But their bass player at the time played kind of like the slasher. You know, he had like the kind of lumberjack look, and he had like this bag over his head. And, you know, he would come in with a hammer and like hit people, break their necks and stuff. And then the guitarist of the band, Micah Butler, he came in at the end of the video, and right when you think that he's going to get killed, he high-fives the killer. And we filmed that kind of in one day, and we were coming up with ideas to make it like really gruesome, and we all came up with the idea to go to like the local kind of butcherish kind of place and buy like pig skin and like buy intestines and like legitimate stuff. Like, this is not like special effects shit. This is like, we bought gross stuff. And there's a scene where the killer's like slicing into someone and pulling their intestines out. And we just put these real intestines from a cow or a pig on whatever band member it was, I can't remember the time, and put a sheet of like skin, real animal skin over them to look like the chest, and cut it and just pulled the intestines out. So stuff like that. And what's even crazier about that is we shot the whole performance stuff in this house kind of out in the country, and we basically stapled black garbage bags to the walls to blacken out the walls, and you know, we had like manual kind of lights flicker, and you know, they did their performance stuff a lot. We brought in an insane amount of blood towards like the finale of the video, and you know, I did a lot of stuff like post-production stuff as far as like adding different visual stuff. But we wanted to shot that, and we were like, man, it needs something else. So we're like, okay, outside of the house, why don't we have the killer drag your drummer, his body, down the sidewalk, and it's the middle of the day, and the drummer, like, we had the funny idea to like him to be completely butt naked and soaked in blood. in the middle of the day, and there were houses around in the country area. It wasn't like a secluded house. So in the video, he's dragging the drummer, who's very naked, and there's one or two little shots where you can see his balls, and he's just like drenched in blood. And I remember, like, in between filming, you know, I pulled out my camera and I was taking like photos of the band, like behind the scenes stuff. And there's one shot that I still like send to them like every once in a great while, of their drummer bent over outside trying to wash himself off, and his balls, like, it's just like hanging there. But yeah, it was a crazy time, and those guys seem to kind of like they seem to be blowing up now, which is really great, you know, because they've definitely been around for a while and they've really like worked their asses off. So I mean, I'm stoked for them. I've had the privilege to photograph that band quite a few times and that music video and stuff. But there was another video that I was really stoked on doing, and it seemed like it was going to happen. And then last minute, I think, as far as like their cost or the location they wanted or something, the location backed out, or I think something having to do with their budget backed out, and it fell through. But I was really excited to do a video for this band out of, I think, Kingsburg or Hanford, called The Remedy.
Oh, really?
And yeah, they're a really great kind of band. But yeah, that was a video I was really stoked on doing. But I'm not opposed to doing any more. But as far as, it's not something I actively pursue, I like I said, I'm 34, and as much as I love music, like, it's films and like, writing that I do kind of like full time. So, I don't find myself going to many like shows unless they're like really huge deals to me,
Yeah.
But I mean, it's something that I would do again probably if the right kind of project came.
Well, that's awesome, dude. That's great to hear, because I saw that video, and I've heard the behind the scenes from multiple people, and it's a really good video. I really, really enjoyed it, and when I was told that you guys did the trash bags on the walls, the only thing I could think was Dexter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that was intended for you guys to do, but that's what I thought. And I thought, of course, Jerry would do something like that in homage.
You know what's funny? Dude, it's so crazy that you said that. Like, the bag thing was actually the band's idea.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, I was, like, wondering how it was going to happen. Like, we're going to shoot performance stuff in a house. Like, well, it kind of crappy daytime. And when I got in there, they'd already done it, which was great. But, speaking of Dexter, like, that's crazy you say that. My son, I named him after that show. His name's Dexter. His name's, Dexter Elliott Smith. So,
wow.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of that show. I mean, the first 4 seasons are just fucking amazing. But after that, I mean, kind of jumped the shark a little.
So
he became a lumberjack at the end. It's weird.
Yeah, did you hate that ending too? Because that felt unnatural to me.
It's like everything led to him being like a lumberjack in Oregon. And he drove his boat into these raging waters after his sister died. It's like, really? That's what we waited for? But what's funny about that is, again, back to Rob Galuzzo from Icons of Fright and Fearnet and stuff. He actually was the sound engineer on the official Dexter podcast.
Oh,
with
nice.
one of the show's writers and producers, Scott Reynolds, who is also one of the main writers on The Following, I think.
Wow.
And Rob got to do some really cool podcast episodes. One of them was a live one from the New Bev Theater in L.A., and Michael C. Hall, who obviously plays Dexter, was there. And it was a really cool thing. But as kind of like an appreciation to Rob and stuff, in the final season, I believe, there's a killer for an episode or two, and they named him Ron Galuzzo after Rob Galuzzo. So, I mean, that was kind of
awesome.
fun to see. Yeah.
That is crazy, man. I really enjoyed that show. I think it was season 3 when his wife got killed.
Yeah, the Trinity Killer season.
The Trinity Killer was by far my favorite one.
Yeah.
I just everything about that story was just amazing. It was so well done. And
what? Actually, I think that might have been 4.
That might have been 4.
Wasn't 3 when it was like Miguel, like the district attorney that ended up killing people?
I thought that was number 2.
No, 2 was Lila, the crazy British woman that seduced Dexter, and then she killed Dope at the end of season 2.
Oh, I think so, maybe.
Yeah,
because
well,
there's one in there with.
they're both good.
There's one in there with. Damn it! It was the 2 of them. The two dudes. I forgot the dude's name. Edward James Olmos. There you go.
Yeah, him and Colin Hanks. I remember that one.
That one was an interesting little story twist at the end too. But that was right. Wasn't that the last season?
That was a couple seasons, I think, before the last season, because it went for, I think, 9.
I think that's the season where his sister saw him killing or found out that he was the killer.
Yeah, I think it was into that season or right around that time that also his sister thought she was in love with him.
Oh, that's...
I mean, like, that's what I'm saying. I mean, no offense to, like, the writers and stuff. They had to... That and... I don't know if you've read it, but there was an interview with one of the producers or writers, and they said that Showtime actually told them up front that you can't kill off Dexter in the season or the series finale. And Showtime had all these rules on what they could and couldn't do. So they kind of felt backed into a corner. So I understand them not really knowing how to end the show, but I just think that anything would have been better than, like, a lumberjack in Oregon.
How the hell why? That would have actually been a way better ending.
I would have loved it if Dexter would have gotten killed.
Yeah, just made it extremely brutal and messed up. Kind of where you feel sorry for him.
Even it would have been great if it was brutal, but even if it wasn't, like, even if it was just, like, very, fast, like, life is like that sometimes, you could be walking down the street and you accidentally get hit by a stray bullet or something,
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, I would have been happy with anything, but...
Man, that was a good show, though. That really was.
Yeah.
Incredible show. So, yeah, what are the places that people can see your work and can check out what you're doing presently and in the future?
Iconsofright.com is the main one, and, the Facebook, I think it's the standard /IconsofRight. I'm on Twitter, if anyone does that shit. Jerry is just okay is the Twitter thing, and that's basically a joke, because when I first did the Twitter thing, it was kind of before I started writing professionally, and so as a joke to just my friends that were on it, I just wrote, the name was Jerry is awesome, and I never really paid attention. So when actors or directors or studios would tweet at me, I'd realize oh shit, I probably look like a fucking knucklehead. Jerry is awesome. That sounds so stupid. So I eventually just settled on Jerry is just okay. But deliriummagazine.com, Fangoria.com. Whenever I write stuff for them, those are the sites. Fangoria Magazine, Delirium Magazine, as far as actual, the physical magazines. And, even if I'm busy and, pick up Fangoria or Delirium anyways, because both those magazines are just fucking great in general.
Yeah, for the horror genre, right? They're strictly horror.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, that, and I mean, there's music and that kind of stuff every once in a while too. I think it's kind of horror based or cult film kind of based,
Yeah, I gotcha. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on,
no
talking
problem.
to me about all the great things you're doing. I love really how horror films and music of the heavier persuasion kind of collide.
Yeah, definitely.
I was actually just thinking, back in about 2004, there was a bunch of horror movies and the superhero movies that they were really on point with their soundtracks. It was a bunch of just oh my God.
The soundtracks to the Masters of Horror television show.
Yeah.
Or man, I just revisited the House of Wax remake a little while back, and
really?
The fucking movie opens with a Deftones song. How awesome is that?
One of my favorite soundtracks is actually the Queen of the Damned, with all those different guys singing the songs, and you know, has Disturbed and Static X. And
You know what's funny is, like, that soundtrack's pretty solid. I like that soundtrack a lot. It's just a movie that I thought was, like, absolute shit. You know, sometimes, like, the soundtracks are better than the movies.
Yeah, and thankfully there was about a 4-year gap there where everything that came out had a soundtrack, and every soundtrack was just phenomenal. And
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my goodness. I was just thinking that, so it's great to have you on the show talking about all of that greatness in one show.
Oh yeah, man, it's a lot of fun.
All right, brother. Well, thank you so much again. It's been amazing, and I hope to hear from you very soon, and keep me updated on all the great things that you're doing, all right?
All right, thank you.
All right, brother. Later. That was Jerry, everyone. Very, very cool guy. I mean, he was influenced by Pantera, too. I was influenced by Pantera when I was a kid. Vinnie Paul was my guy, though. It wasn't until later that I found that Dime was just as incredible as Vinnie. And sadly, I never got to see any incantation of Vinnie and Dime because I was born too late. I was 15 when Dime was shot, so never got to see him. It was tragedy. Whole generation of children not able to see somebody as legendary as Pantera because somebody had to be stupid. But I digress. Back to Jerry. So this guy, very humble, very great. After the interview, he got to go to LA and do a signing for Fangoria. You should have seen him. I was watching his posts on social media. Hilarity, because it was like a little kid tweeting about how fantastic Disneyland was. It was incredible. Jerry, you are awesome, man. Thank you again so very much for being on the show. If you guys are into horror movies as much as Jerry is, please go check out iconsoffright.com, check out Fangoria, and check out Delirium Magazine. Jerry's work appears from time to time in Delirium Magazine and Fangoria Magazine, but he is editor-in-chief of Icons of Fright. So if you are interested, go check out iconsoffright.com. Recently, Jerry actually instituted this thing called Fictional Fridays, and what they are is short stories, short horror stories that are really, really interesting, and I'm really excited about that. I try to catch them every Friday. Speaking of Friday, if you haven't noticed, for the past couple of weeks, I've been posting random starts on Friday and on Monday. This is because I wanted to add something more to the podcast. I mean, WordPress is a blog site. I'm not the best writer in the world. I'm trying to work out writing right now, but for the time being, I thought something extra would be really fun to do. So the random starts, basically what you do is you start your day, start up your audio device, you press shuffle. The first song that comes on, you take a screenshot, you post that on any media, social media, whatever. You talk about if there's a special meaning or if there's a reason why that's on your playlist. Basically, it's just something extra to add, something to have fun with. So that's why I did it. So it's going to be an ongoing feature here on the Local Music Revolution, and I really, really thank Justin from the Lighthouse Keeper for giving me the idea way back in April, I believe it was, and it took me a little while to try to figure out if I could do it or not, and I said, screw it, let's do this. So it is what it is, and I hope you guys enjoy. If you guys want to participate, just let me know you guys are posting. I really want to hear what you guys are listening to. I'm also very interested about what you guys think of the show. So please contact me on Twitter at TLMR Podcast, on Instagram at The Local Music Revolution, and on Facebook, facebook.com/The Local Music Revolution. You can also the blog, which these episodes are posted, thelocalmusicrevolution.wordpress.com. That is where all of the information will be that you need to know about the podcast. That's where you can sign up to be on the podcast. That's where you get all the new information. Everything is there. Another great feature of the WordPress is the store. If you want to help the podcast out, go get some merchandise. There are shirts, there are stickers, there are bumper stickers, postcards, posters, blankets, pillows. Yeah, I added those last two because I thought they were funny. They're all there. All you have to do, go check them out. If you do buy something, contact me. Let me know that you've done it, and you will be posted on the blog and all of our social media sites. You can also rate, comment, add, and subscribe The Local Music Revolution on iTunes and Stitcher and most podcast catchers. For iTunes, all you have to do is search The Local Music Revolution in the podcast section of iTunes, and The Local Music Revolution will pop up. For Stitcher, all you have to do is download the app on your Android device and sign up. Once you get signed up, go into the search and look up The Local Music Revolution. We will be there. You can follow, and all of the most recent and all of the past episodes will be on all of the podcast catchers. I'd like to take another moment and thank Stringjoy for being our sponsor. Thank you guys so much for letting us on and being part of your roster. If you guys are interested in custom strings or tension-based strings, all you have to do is go to stringjoy.com and look at what they have. They have a selection of pre-set strings, or you can customize the strings that you get. When you're at checkout, all you have to do is type in the promo code LOCAL. That's LOCAL, and you'll get a discount for being one of our wonderful listeners. After you've done this, please contact them over social media and tell Stringjoy that you heard about them on the Local Music Revolution. I'm always looking for bands and musical companies to have on the show. So if you are, or if you know of somebody that is a musician or has a company that helps these musicians, please show them to the blog, thelocalmusicrevolution.wordpress.com, and please have them sign up using the interview sign-up sheet. I will get to them as soon as possible, and we will do an interview to promote them and their product or their music. Because of this podcast, I have made so many friends. I have really met a lot of great people, one of which is Ethan. He is such a good guy. He constantly is backing me and the podcast, always trying to help out, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear next week when he is featured, because his project, Cool Homer Jack, is amazing. The discussion is really great. You get to hear some of his instrumentals, and we talk about his process and what he does. So please, check it out next week. That's it for this episode of the Local Music Revolution. Thank you, everybody. You have been wonderful. As always, this is the Local Music Revolution. I am Ogre. You are awesome. Take care and be good, everyone.
This is the Local Music Revolution. The Local Music Revolution. The Local Music Revolution. Local Music Revolution. Local Music Revolution. Local Music Revolution. Local Music Revolution.